You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again to commence our broadcast week here on the network. And of course, we do that with your bi-weekly options extravaganza known around the globe as the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the ever scintillating network upon which so many of you are binging. Remember, if you do like what you hear, do throw some stars our way. Could be on this show, could be on the full network feed, could be where you get our app, wherever you get the content at the end of the day. It's available just about everywhere you get audio these days. And some places you get video, like YouTube as well. By the way, if you like a little behind-the-scenes taste of how the sausage is made, we did post up the video from that live episode of the Option Block that we did at the Option Pit Summit. So you can see that on our YouTube channel. We did tweet it out as well, so you folks can find that there. So folks are always asking, you got a video of the show? There you go. There's your video taste. A little bit of behind-the-scenes goodness for all of you out there who are so inclined. Up there on the old YouTube for your own enjoyment. And of course, you want to enjoy even more. You want to enjoy, now we just did last week, Pro Q&A 100. So 100 full Pro Q&A sessions for you to go. Seriously, if you listen to all those and you don't pick up something, I don't know what's wrong with you. That's not on us. Some of the best minds in the world, options and derivatives, there to answer your questions, as well as nearly 100 episodes of Options Oddities, as well as a bunch of other exclusive stuff we threw in there, early access to fun stuff, as well as, of course, all the live streams. And, of course, coming up, in another week or so, another giveaway. Can't keep all this stuff straight we're sending to you folks. There's mountains of it here. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to get your name in the hat for all that goodness, all that great content, all that fun, and a whole bunch more. Speaking of fun, let's kick off our broadcast week with a little bit of fun, shall we? Let's get the old blood pumping. Let's get everybody awakened here suitably, because I am joined once again by the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com, as well as Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. They are warming up their buzzer fingers, listeners, because it is time for our 80s Wrestling Trivia Challenge. All right, listeners, here we go. Time to guess another 80s wrestler. Today's wrestler, another good one. Another one very much synonymous with the 80s. That's pretty much good, because he wrestled into the 90s, but he retired in like 94 officially. I think he did a couple of pop-up matches in like the 2000s just for fun showcase stuff. But really, he officially pretty much retired as a wrestler in 94. So his run was mostly in the late 70s into the 80s. And this person, known as one of the best in-ring workers around. When people bandy about some of the greatest matches of all time, they often cite two matches that this person was a part of. First off, his IC belt match with Macho Man at WrestleMania 3. When WF polls their audience of what is their favorite match of all time, a couple come up. There's that, what I mentioned before, Taker and Shawn Michaels. I think that was much later. And then, of course, this one, Macho Man and this person from WrestleMania 3 for the IC belt. It is still hailed as one of the all-time classics. He also had an extensive run after he left WWF over there, I believe it was in WCW, with Ric Flair. They went on a huge run. They also had some matches that are considered to be all-time classics, including multiple one-hour matches out there. So that's another hint for who this person is. Another hint, this person was a good guy. Never worked heel in his entire career. Always was a face. Always was a good guy. He tried to turn heel, and people said, no, you're too good. No one's going to buy it. You got to stay face. And last but not least, this may be cemented for you. This person had the best given name in wrestling history. This person easily could have gone out under his given name, which was Richard Blood. You could think of all the things you could do with the last name of Blood as a wrestler. Probably would have had to be heel, though. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they didn't go for it. So his name was Richard Blood. I shall now unmute it. Of whom am I speaking? I heard Sebastian first, so I'll give it to Sebastian. I'll give it to Sebastian. TOSAW, you're winning by a country mile. Don't worry.
All right. It was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yes. Ricky,
I buzzed like 2 hints in.
Ricky, I have you guys muted. None of those buzzes counted.
Well, we should have it to make it fair. We should have a written buzz and have it in the chat, because otherwise it's unfair.
Okay, maybe we'll do that. You know, you did chat. I will open it up, and then whoever types it in first. How about that? Because all of your pre-buzzes do not count. But it's only when I unmute you, the first one I hear. That's all I go by. There's no other All right, Ricky the Dragon. That is the full point for you there, Mr. Greasy and Meatball, which is good because you need some catch-up points here. I already gave you his real name. That's kind of like, that would have been my half-point trivia question. I don't have a lot of other half-pointers for Ricky the Dragon, but a legend indeed. Had some awesome matches. Go check them out if you are intrigued by such things. Some of these ones still hold up to this day as we keep on rolling right on into the option block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, welcome to the trading block. The option block would be, of course, the name of the show. Welcome to the trading block portion of the show, where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And yeah, another kind of shrug your shoulders start to the week, kind of a mixed start, depends where you hang out. If you're a Dow person, first off, why listening to us? We don't talk a lot of Dow here on the show, but that said, if you're a Dow person, off 0.3%, I kid, I joke, we love you all out there. S&P up about 0.15%, so ever so slightly, flirting with that 4,200 level. Not quite getting there today, but we shall see. The day is young. Maybe we'll blow through it later on today. And the NASDAQ up about 0.5%. So NASDAQ feeling a little bit of juice out there today. So another one of those days, kind of depends where you hang your hat in the market, what kind of day you are having. That means all of our vol friends kind of mixed as well. VIX, when we kicked off the show, just a little bit north of the 17 handle, 1705 listeners. That puts it up almost half a point, about 0.45 from where it was on Thursday's show. VVIX, the vol of vol, it's kind of given and taken 5 points all the time. It gave up 5 points on our show on Friday, down to 90. Now it's back up another 5 points, back to 95. So it keeps vacillating between 90 and 95. On the upper half of that range right now, VXX 3540, pretty much unched, down about 1/10 of a point from Thursday's show. Same deal for UVXY 310 when we kicked off the show, down about 1/10 of a point there as well. SVIX was at a 2010. It was literally unched on the week. UVIX 930, down about 0.2 of a point. And VolQ 1690, up a whopping 0.15. It's not a heck of a lot of evolution, except for maybe a little bit of VIX cash and a little bit of vol of vol. Outside of that, not a heck of a lot of change from where we were on Thursday's show. But Mr. Meatball, we shall start with you as our winner today, sir. First off, any enduring memories you have of one Richard Blood, have at it, and then B, sir, what's catching your eye in the market? By the way, can you believe they didn't go with Rick Blood or something like that for his name?
Yeah, you know, I will say, I always thought he was such a cool wrestler. It just technically sound, not too flashy other than the name, and he was just a great great wrestler. And yeah, he was on WCW, but they called him Rick Steamboat, and it just didn't work. You need the Dragon in there because that's really what set him apart, right? I mean, do you want to go see Rick Steamboat wrestle or Ricky the Dragon
Exactly.
Steamboat?
It was always the Dragon.
I know who I want to see.
Apparently WWF brought him back briefly for like a few months in early 90s after WCW, and they just called him the Dragon. And they didn't even mention that he was his former past with them, that he was an IC, none of that. He was a new character called the Dragon.
Well, that was just dumb.
And he shot fire, and everyone's like, this is ridiculous. And he thought so too, so he left and went back to WCW.
Yeah.
Just the Dragon shooting fire. It was weird. Yes. But I digress. Have at it.
I mean, he was great. I'm a big fan, and we all miss Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I'll say that.
Indeed. Still alive, though, thankfully. So that's nice.
Yes.
That's a good thing. Can't say that about many 80s wrestlers, but I think because he retired so early, that probably helped his longevity a little bit. Probably. All right, what's catching your eye out there in the markets today, sir?
Well, we're slightly down today. The NASDAQ is still up, but barely. We've had a couple of big kind of interday dips. When you look at the regular indexes, the Dow continues to struggle. The Russell 2000, it's up 1.2% today, while the S&P is down and the NASDAQ is basically flat. Kind of interesting. A lot of mergers and acquisitions today. Some big ones in oil, a couple other ones floating around. That I think is giving the market a little bit of a goose. And then you just have some pretty kind of blasé movement in kind of the mega caps today. NVIDIA, believe it or not, is down. Granted, 38 cents, but it's down. But Apple's down. But then you've got Google, Meta on the heels of getting fined $1.3 billion, up 2%. Why
of course.
not?
Why wouldn't you rally on the heels of a record fine?
So, yeah, it's been kind of it's been a really choppy day. There's not a lot happening. It's relatively slow today. And, you can kind of see it in the way the market is trading. There just isn't much going on. Our old friend Palantir continues to just boom higher, which I think is interesting. That thing might be heading back to $20 the way it's been rallying. It might be NVIDIA 2.0. An interesting name that I'm seeing a ton of paper on is AMD. They are betting pretty hard on AMD continuing to rally here. So put that one on your watch list, folks, if it already is not. But other than that, that's kind of what I'm looking at today as we trade.
Does seem like they are starting to whisper of AI around Palantir as well. And that's all you need. All you need is those two letters, Mr. Meatball. Yes. And you're right. This could be back to 20 and beyond. Let's see. How high did Palantir get in the go-go days? 35. I thought it was higher than that. 35.18 back in January of 2020. I thought it was higher. I thought it was closer, maybe double that level. But so $35. So it can obviously get higher from where it was. $35 in those early go-go days of January 2021. Seems like a lifetime ago now. I know for a lot of our listeners, you weren't around in the options market then. Many of you are very new. So that could seem like ancient history to you, which is crazy in and of itself. But that's the market we're in right now. A Mr. Uncleist of Mike's, a.k.a. Mega Richard Blood fan. What are your thoughts on one, Richard Blood, sir? And then B, what's catching your eye in a, I guess, modest Uncle Mike kind of day? Depends where you look.
A big fan of Ricky Steamboat. I mean, not a lot of people know this, but before his WrestleMania 3 match, Macho Man injured his larynx. And if you YouTube it, you can find him getting some breathing treatments or had to go to a speech pathologist because he couldn't talk what the Macho Man did to him. I mean, it was pretty bad. So thankfully for him, he was able to get the win in WrestleMania 3 and do what he did. But that was definitely a big deal back then. There's another one. It was before he went to the WWF to where he owned a gym. And, I forget who it was. But there were some guys that went to the gym that he owned. And it was on I think it was when he was in the Mid-Atlantic, and some other wrestlers from the Mid-Atlantic went in there and just he wasn't there that week because he was out wrestling, but his brother was there at the gym, and then they went in there and they beat up his brother, so they had to have some matches to settle the score for that. When they attacked him at his gym, he's like, hey, I scrimped and saved. I finally was able to buy a gym, and this is how they treat me. So the Dragon's been through a lot in his day, and much respect for Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He actually was kind of, in my opinion, he was kind of a precursor to the luchador movement of the late 90s in the WCW, where you see guys doing a lot of very good acrobatic stuff. And he was doing a lot of those things back in the 80s before the luchadors came around. And don't get me wrong, the Mexican wrestling's been around forever with the luchadors, but when they really became popular in the late 90s, I really think Ricky the Dragon Steamboat should get a lot more credit for how technically sound he was and with doing a lot of movements like that. So big Ricky Steamboat fan, no doubt about it. He was one of the legends of the sport. Now, in terms of the markets, I mean, I think this is just about the debt ceiling. I guess they're going to negotiate later today if they haven't started already. I guess President Biden's going to meet with the House Speaker, and they're going to do whatever it is they do behind closed doors. And I believe they have till, I think it's June 1st until the U.S. defaults on their debt if they don't get the debt ceiling raised. No one wants to be in office when it happens, and each side of the aisle is trying to leverage their agenda on the other side of the aisle. And I mean, it's like it's frustrating that this is a thing. And you can blame the Democrats, you can blame the Republicans, but the point is that we just spend too darn much money, and it's both sides of the aisle just use this as political grandstanding, and very likely magically we are going to get a deal at the 11th hour, and CNN's going to say that the Democrats won the negotiations. Fox News is going to say the Republicans won the negotiations, but in reality, America loses in situations like this, in my opinion. But I think that's what the market's kind of waiting on right now. In that, just with the S&P up 4 points on the day, bonds are relatively flat. We're not getting a lot of movement in things right now. So we have a lot going on, but we're waiting for a lot of different things. We're waiting to see what the debt ceiling situation is going to be. We're waiting to see on regional banks how that's going to play out. We're waiting to see on the Fed, what are they going to do in June? Are they going to pause, or are they going to raise another quarter point, or are they going to lower it? We kind of laughed about that last week, but in this day and age, you never want to laugh about anything. So I think it's just a wait and see type of market right now. And they're just trying to wait and see something at this point. So that is what I'm seeing, or should I say, waiting to see.
Yes, we're all waiting to exhale in today's market out there. Let's see if the options market is doing the same, or if they're putting up some numbers, if it's breathing fast and furious out there. And, VIX is keeping pace. VIX of late, whether it's all this debt ceiling concern or what have you, there's just a lot of paper out there in VIX land right now. And some days it's not really driven by underlying, as we've talked about on Vol Views last week and other shows. We're seeing funky spreads go up for hundreds of thousands of contracts, even on days when VIX itself is mostly unched. So there is just a dense wave of paper out there driven by a lot of things, including probably in no small part by all this concern over the debt ceiling issues out there. But today, another day where VIX is looking pretty heavy, 637,000 contracts on the tape for VIX today. We got another. Oh, you know what? It's the June 30-40. Looks like they're coming for that again. Maybe putting it on again. Looks like, are they buying it? They're 120,000 times that spread traded again today. This time for 37.5 cents. Intriguing. We also have 75,000 of the June 27th calls going up as well. So just another smorgasbord of paper out there. But that June 30-40, which has dominated the OI once again, dominating the tape out there today. And again, that trade alone accounting for a good chunk, nearly 250,000 contracts just in that one trade alone. SPY, also no slouch, 4.8 million. By the way, the ADV in VIX, hanging out close to 800K, 786 right now. SPY, 4.8 million. The ADV, 8.35 million. The S, 1.42 million. The ADV, 2.75 million out there, listeners. Small caps, what Mr. Meatball was just talking about, 544,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV, 1.07. And the Qs, 1.52 million. The ADV, 2.88 million. Before we roll out of indexes, really quickly, our buddy, the Flow Master, reminding us here, listeners, that it's an anniversary week. Happy 1-year anniversary to the launch of 0 Day. Do you all remember where you were when 0 Day launched? The first full week with all the weekly expirations was last year, the week of May 16th. So we now have a full year under our belt of this 0 Day phenomenon. Of course, the whole thing, the whole 0 DTE thing wouldn't really kick off in earnest until towards the latter portion of last year, but that's where we had its full inception there. Mr. Meatball, I know you're probably the biggest fan of all of us here, though, for the whole 0 Day phenomenon. What are your thoughts on the 1-year anniversary? And looking back on it, how do you think this has changed the way you trade, sir?
I mean, it's been probably the biggest change in 20 years in trading. You don't see the VIX. It's changed the kind of behavior of the VIX. The VIX still does big things that it's supposed to do, but the little VIX spikes on a sell-off just aren't there the same way they used to be. The activity there is just massive. I don't know how this ends. I continue to think this is all this premium selling on the day of is starting to smell a little like XIV, but it is an incredibly just interesting to watch how these things have grown and exploded. Just absolutely fascinating.
And I think that might make for a fun question of the week, listeners out there, for you folks. And really, how has this impacted you? So going live as we speak, listeners, 0 Day trading launched 1 year ago last week in the SPX. Happy anniversary. Has the launch of these products changed the way you trade options? Yes, I'm short term now, or no, I don't trade them. Again, that will go live as we speak. Hitting the button now. Bam, there we go. Live tweeting, listeners. That's compelling radio if ever there was. We'll check in later on in the show to see if there's any impact. Uncle Mike, I know you're not the hugest 0 Day guy, so is there any real impact for you, or you probably would vote in more in the no category for this?
I mean, there's definitely an impact on it, but it's not something to where it's not the world with which I live. So is there an impact? Yeah, I think there's definitely an impact on it. But in terms of selling 1 to 6 month options on covered calls and things like that, not much of one. Maybe a little bit in my aggressive strategy, but for the most part, it's not the world with which I live.
You know, you're all about selling the 0 Day iron flies. We know you, Uncle Mike. You can't lie to us.
Hey, and you know what we should do? We should come up with a new option strategy and call it the Dragon now. I'm inspired.
Dragon. Intriguing. All right, you work on that while I continue to run down some of the volume from today. Let's go out to the single names, listeners. We already established it's kind of a dense day for the indexes. Let's see if the single names are following suit, or is it a day that they've been left behind? And you know what, listeners? You know, it's an interesting day when NVIDIA is at number 10. Usually lately, this has been near the top of our list. Cost you 267,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. That gets you to the aforementioned NVIDIA. NVIDIA weirdly kind of unched right now, up about a dime or so, 312.75. Even though earlier today it has had quite the pop from, it's actually up almost exactly 6 handles from its nadir. It hit 306.80, trading just ticked over 312.80. So it's up a little over $6 now. So wow, big pop from this morning, even though we're kind of hanging out kind of flat for most of the rest of the session after that big move out there. So intriguing stuff. Obviously, that's driving some paper, but not enough to put NVIDIA near the top of our list this week. 267, still a decent start here to the week. And you can call this now our top 10 is kind of almost the AI top 10 out there, given all these names. Number 9, good old Goog. Not Goog L today, but Goog. Alphabet Class C, 126.20, up nearly $3 today. Again, another one very much has an iron in the AI fire. Good for 286,000 contracts out there. And the number 9 spot on our top 10 today. Number 8, a name we don't normally talk about, and also a welcome respite from AI madness. This is Pfizer, ticker symbol PFE. You know it. You love it. Maybe you don't. 38.25 is where it's trading right now, up about $1.50 right now. Good for 298,000 contracts. And the number 8 spot. Number 7, getting back out to another name we were just talking about, and another name that maybe has the whisper of AI about it. Do they have the AI pixie dust sprinkled all over them? Well, their recent performance may argue yes. This is Palantir. Again, they were just trading with a 7 handle not too long ago. 11.98 right now, threatening to break the 12 handle. Looks like they did earlier today. They got up to 12.10. A little bit below that right now, but hey, the day is young. Again, and Palantir now, all of a sudden, the last week or so, post-earnings, back in our top 10 quite a bit. Number 7 today, 331,000. And then number 6, just joking about them, paying record fines, or not paying, this is going to be tied up in litigation, obviously, for years and appeals, but being assigned a record fine for their data privacy issues out of the EU. This is, of course, Meta. And why wouldn't you rally the stock on a day when you're assigned a record fine? You know, you're not even selling the fact. You're just buying the fact now. You're buying the rumor and you're buying the fact out there in Meta. Up about $5.50, trading 251.20 right now, up about 2.25%. Good for about 380,000 contracts and the number 6 spot. And you know what? If you're not tired of AI, that's good because we got number 5 right behind it. The other half of the alphabet twins, it's Google. Trading 125 and about a half, up 2 3/4. Good for 409,000. I mean, it's inescapable. I mean, Tesla, I guess if you consider them to have autopilot, maybe that could be considered AI. Bam, we got AI all over our top 10 today. Spoiler alert, Tesla's going to be in there somewhere. Number 5, again, Alphabet, 409,000 contracts for Class A. Number 4, this is also interesting development out there these days. We're seeing a bit of a flippening in the chip zone. AMD coming in number 4, NVIDIA at number 10. That's the widest chasm we've seen between those two in a while. AMD number 4, up about $2, $1.90 today, trading 107.70 right now. Good for 418,000 contracts. Number 3, this is the name you don't hear bandied about, even though they have stakes in just about everything these days. You don't hear them bandied about in the vanguard of AI. This is Apple. They have other things going on, headsets, cars, all that fun. Can they sell iPhones and iPads? All that goodness. Apple kind of looking paltry today. 419,000 contracts only out there. 174.25, off about $1 on the day. So a day that Apple is red. So the market is angry, my friends. When Apple is red, the market is angry. And then number 2, the Amazonians out there listening. They're another one that has a little bit of skin in the old AI game and probably looking to get more. Amazon right now, there we go. Amazon 115.10, off about $1.15 or about 1%. Good for 437,000 contracts. So a decent day for them. Not a blockbuster day by any means, but also more than Apple. Kind of a weird light day. I guess the options market, again, and no one likes it when Apple is red. So no volume, no love, just no joy for Apple today. Number 3, number 2, Amazon, 437. And number 1, let the cat out of the bag. It's Tesla. Of course it is. 1.32 million contracts. 186 and about a half is where they're trading up right now. Up about $6.50 or 3.5% today. I'm not sure what's driving it today. I mean, who knows? It's a day that ends in Y. It doesn't really need much of a reason to move. It is Tesla after all, but a nice pop out there today and probably carrying a lot of the move of the NASDAQ on its back today. And you know what, listeners? We are not done with earnings season, not by a long shot. A pretty banger week again this week. Today, Zoom. Remember them? Darling of the pandemic era? Are they still a darling? We'll find out this week. Tomorrow, we got Lowe's and Dick's Sporting Goods. Wednesday, Kohl's, NVIDIA. May have heard of them, listeners. Snowflake, Red Robin Gourmet Burgers. I went to one of those recently for the first time in ages. I haven't been to one of those in forever. And that was kind of an intriguing experience. Am I a Red Robin fan? I don't know. Guess we'll find out. Thursday, we have Best Buy and Dollar Tree and Burlington. They're not Coat Factory anymore. They're just Burlington. So I guess coats are beneath them now. They do all kinds of stuff. And Build-A-Bear and Costco. Friday, we got Big Lots. In terms of things popping off out there, let's see. We've got today after the bell. Let's go to the beloved darling of the pandemic. This was Zoom, listeners. By the way, of course, you can get all this data for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab, and you are off to the races. And because we love you all, we don't charge you a penny for it. And it's actually pretty darn useful data. So if you're not checking it out, it costs you nothing. It's pretty useful. Just get a sense of how things have performed and are pricing in right now and some of the history out there before you start slinging things during earnings season. A Zoom after the bell today, trading a little bit shy of $70 when we ran this report. They're pricing in $7.37. In the past, they've moved 801, so slightly less juice, but not a ton. That's kind of interesting, and maybe people think most of the pandemic bad news has been priced in for them at this point. I mean, the stock over the past year is off 20%. It peaked at 122, almost 120, actually about 124 back in June of last year. It's 71 and a third right now. So, but it's also off its low of $60.50, which came just earlier this month. So maybe the worst is priced in. I guess we'll see. Got Dick's Sporting Goods there before the bell tomorrow. 126 and 2/3 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $9.63. In the past, they moved $9.92. So similar levels there as well. Intuit after the bell tomorrow. 446 even is where they were trading. They're pricing in $20.15. In the past, they've moved about 16 and a quarter. So fair amount of extra juice out there in Intuit. Are they hoping to get some of that AI sprinkle on them? Listeners, I know who is. They already have it. It's NVIDIA. 24th after the bell, 312 and 2/3 is where they were trading. They're pricing in 20 and a third. In the past, they've moved $15. So yeah, a little over $5 worth of extra juice. And given how NVIDIA is performing, who could argue that is not merited? Snowflake, 24th after the bell, 176.82 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $15.44. In the past, they've moved $16.12. So a little bit less juice in Snowflake. That's intriguing. I may not have gone out on a limb and assumed that. Who else do we have here before we roll on into the odd block? Let's go out to Best Buy. You know, this is another name. They're the 25th before the bell. People have been ringing their death knell forever. 70.5 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $5.12. In the past, they've moved $4.30. So a decent amount of extra juice out there in Best Buy. Burlington, don't you dare call them Coat Factory. Burlington, 25th before the bell, 167.88. They're pricing in $17.60. In the past, they moved $12.70. Holy crap. They are pricing in some juice out there in Burlington stores. What is afoot here in Burlington? Well, they're up $11.50 on the year. A year ago, they were trading $145.50. They sold off to $106. That looks like that was back in the September to October timeframe from last year. So they're up about 60 handles from there. They did top out, though, back in beginning of the year, January, 239.94. So they're off substantially from that. Year to date, they're off about 20%. So it's actually been a rough year for them. But wow, that is a surprising amount of juice for Burlington stores. Intriguing stuff. Again, that's why we run the numbers, listeners, to find out nuggets like that. Let's go out to Costco, 25th after the bell. $4.96.5 is where they were trading. They're pricing in $14.16. In the past, they moved $10.12. So over $4 worth of extra juice in Costco as well. My goodness, man, they're pricing in some juice here. In terms of the season right now, we continue to drop, listeners. We're down to about a 90% right now. Week one was the big banger week, 146%. Every other week has been underperformance, with the last 2 weeks coming in at 77% and 74%. So underperformance last couple of weeks, bringing us back down. Our long-term average hanging out at about a 96%. Check it all out for yourselves, theoptionsinsider.com. As we go on into our next segment, it is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, let's do it. Let's get weird. Let's get wild. Let's get a little whimsical. Let's see what the Eye of Sauron has in store for us today. First, let's go out. You know, we have talked about this one before, but it has been quite some time. This is Invesco Limited, ticker symbol IVZ, trading $15.15 right now, off about a dime today. On the year, it's been a bit of a challenge, off nearly 20%. Again, kind of going back to what we're talking about when you strip away the top 5 or 10 tech names from the market. Not quite the banner year you might assume out there. A year ago, this name was trading $18.70, ran up to about $19.50. And then they came for it, and they drove it down to the low for the year of $13.20. That was in September of last year. Then it shot back up pretty aggressively. On the 3rd of November, it was trading $15. On the November 11th, it was trading $20 again. So it shot up. Obviously, some good earnings or some other announcement along those lines to really just send the stock back up into the stratosphere. Hung out there for a while. Hit its apex at the beginning of the year on February 2nd of $20.50. Since then, they've had a hard time maintaining that. They sold off a couple of times back to where they are right now, $15, and they bounced and hit it again. So they're hitting $15 again right now, 15, 16. So seems like at least some of the near-term steam has fallen out of Invesco, which maybe explains what our Eye of Sauron found out there today. Looks like somebody, Mr. Meatball, is liking themselves a little bit of near-term downside, and they're going straight for the jugular. They're going for straight at-the-money puts. They came in this morning and scooped nearly 6,900 of the June 15 puts. So at-the-money puts. They paid a whopping 65 cents for these. That's a 41 vol. The stock was actually a little bit lower when they bought these. It was $14.95. So these were slightly in the money puts when they bought them. The stock has rallied a little bit since then. So they failed the first test, but just ever so slightly. There are no earnings in this cycle. The next announcement is on July 26th. By the way, they didn't stop there. They came in and bought 1,000 more. And then looks like they did a few more after that. A total of about 9,000 of these puts have traded today. So, Mr. Meatball, somebody liking themselves some straight at-the-money puts in Invesco, sir, and ones that are not that far out, just going out in June. What say you, sir? Intriguing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. They're just 8,800 of these trade on the day. Not a lot of open interest here. Just a straight, they swept bought before they put up the big print to move the underlying higher. Really strong trade. Really good. They're basically saying this thing's going higher. So very kind of interesting.
Interesting. They're gobbling up a whole bunch of puts out here in Invesco, listeners. So yeah, intriguing stuff and straight at the money. They're not going out to January or anything like that. Just June, straight at the money puts in Invesco. Intriguing stuff. We'll have to dig around to see if any stock legs went up with that bad boy, but intriguing there. All right, let's go out to another name we haven't talked about in a little bit. This is Open Door Technologies. Remember, we joked about them and their name not too long ago. This is a residential real estate name out of San Fran. Ticker symbol OPEN, OPEN, trading about $2.50 right now, $2.56 to be precise. Up a whopping 15 cents. So that's about 6.25% for them. So not a bad day for Open. Let's see. A year ago, though, they were trading 6.75, and they shot up to their high for the year on June 2nd of $8.08. And that was kind of all she wrote. They came for it since then. They crushed it down actually to 92 cents in December of last year. So that last year in June, they went from $8 in June. By December, they were trading 92 cents. My goodness. Talk about just value destruction. And then they tried to rally it earlier in this year. Remember, of course, through February, we saw a surprising rally in a lot of names, including apparently Open Door. Got up to about $2.80 again. So you're talking a pretty decent pop from 92 cents up to $2.80. And then they kind of ran out of steam. It fell back down to about $1.25. That was, looks like about a month ago. And over the last month, they've had a bit of a rally again as well. They've gone up over a point in the last month, up 82% in the last month, back up to $2.50 where they're hanging out right now. So wild year, wild month for Open Door Technologies. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found out there, listeners. And it looks like we got a similar trade to what we just talked about, but actually, like we're getting a lot closer to the fire. We've got the June 2.5 puts expiring next week, next Friday, the 2nd. So we got a couple of week put trade here, and someone coming in and just loading up on a bunch of now at the money puts, the 2.5 puts, lifting the offer for 20 cents. This is about 127 vol, as meaningful as such things are in these types of names. The stock was pretty much exactly here when these went up, so the stock hasn't budged. Earnings not a factor. The next announcement is August 3rd. These go out in 2 weeks, so not an earnings play. So Mr. Meatball, intriguing. Someone else coming in and maybe fading a little bit of near-term love in this name. This time, though, they're going a lot closer to the fire. They're buying straight at the money puts and they're only going out a couple of weeks. So I guess they're figuring open door plunging back to the $1 level, sir. What say you?
Yeah, it certainly looks like that's the case. This thing has really had a rough slug. Nice little rebound the last couple of days. They're putting up a big fade against it right now. Mark, do you think it was a roll? Because I see 10,000, the twos going up, and there was some big open interest. So do you think they just reset their delta, or do you think this was just a straight put spread?
Let's pull it up here, listeners, and we can find out all together. Because there was a size other print that went up this morning too. There's the Jan 2 puts and the Jan 2 half puts. Those traded a ton this morning. 10,000 of each of those. We didn't want to get into those because there was some closing and stuff going on there. But it seemed like at least only one. That was a roll. That was a roll.
Yeah, and then you've got the June halves. They're looking for a move lower, like right now. That's what I'm seeing. Yeah,
actually, it looks like more of these have traded now. 4,500 of these puts have traded today. So
they are not messing around. They're saying you are going right back to whence you came.
I don't think it was a roll. I mean, it doesn't look like the size lines up that well for the roll. But either way, there is a ton. Even if they are rolling from somewhere else, there is a ton of opening paper here on these 2.5 puts. So listeners, look out below here in open. At least someone appears to be saying that. So maybe the good days of 2.5 levels for open. I mean, if you're willing to pay 20 cents for a $2.5 stock for puts that go out in 2 weeks, you're betting on something's happening. The stock can't stay here, listeners. So intriguing stuff. We'll come back to these pretty soon. Speaking of coming back, let's come back to a trade we talked about back on the March 27th episode, listeners. We have quite the back catalog of trades to go back in and check up on, see how they did. This is OLPX Holdings, Inc. They own companies like OLPX, Inc. and Penelope Intermediate Group, or whatever that means to you out there, listeners. Let's see. Trading right now, $3.42. On the year, they're off 77%. So this thing has fallen out of bed. It was trading $15 at the beginning of the year. Got up to $18 in July of last year. So obviously $3.50, $3.40 right now. A rough year for OLPX Holdings. Let's see. At the time we talked about on March 27th, we talked about somebody looks like they were betting on a little bit of upside. So go figure how these worked out. They were swinging for the fences on the April 4th, but it wasn't as outlandish as it seems. We saw 3,000 of the April 4th going up paper, lifting the offer for 35 cents. The stock at the time, listeners, $3.96. So a little bit of a different deal. These are pretty much at the money calls. They came back in and bought 1,750 more, also for 35 cents. Total of about 7,000 traded on the day, plus some other calls going up. The April 5s traded 3,300 times that day. The May 4s traded 1,100 times. It was kind of a bit of a call palooza going on out there in OLPX that day. We pretty much just focused on the April 4s. But intriguing stuff nonetheless. These were not looking good now, but back in April expiration, these were looking pretty good. The stock actually closed on expiration at $4.80. So if they had stuck to their guns, they were looking pretty good. However, it looks like they lacked the courage of their convictions, listeners, because it looks like they came in and dumped some of them very quickly. We talked about this trade on the 27th. The next day, looks like they came in and scratched a good chunk of them for 35 cents, again, the next day. So, again, just scratching them. And then that was about 2,600 of them on the 28th. The next day, 29th, they scratched, or didn't scratch, they lost money this time, 2,200. So they lost about 33 grand on those. So it was interesting that they had the right trade on. They actually would have made money on these. And yet they kind of bailed on most of the trade. Looks like they might have had a little bit left. Again, we only profiled those two trades. So I think those two trades are pretty much scratched to losers. If they left a couple on, couple hundred, maybe 1,000 on, then they could have made some money because the stock went out at $4.80. But it seems like Mr. Meatball, they came in, they swung for the fences right away, and then they bailed right away, which we don't tend to see too often, Mr. Meatball. What say you?
Yeah, it definitely kind of an odd one. Maybe they just changed their mind on the trade. They went, oh, you know what? This was a bad idea and killed it. I'm not sure exactly why why this happened, but they certainly didn't like it.
Yeah, they were waiting for something specific, listeners. It wasn't earnings. Earnings are on the 3rd, so they weren't going to get earnings in this trade. Must have been something else, some sort of announcement from the company, whatever it was. It came out, they didn't like it, or something else happened. Either way, they had a very short holding period on these, and they ended up bailing and scratching, losing a little bit of money, I think, net on the trade. But and when the weird thing is that it actually worked out. There's one of these few ones we talk about where they swung for the fences and it worked out, and yet they kind of bailed early. Usually it's the other way. Usually say people load up, they swing for the fences, then they get the move and they don't do anything, and then the stock falls out of bed and they lose it all. This case, they bailed way too early and then they got the move. So kind of a weird one, listeners, as we keep on rolling and get into the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Strategy Block. And Uncle Mike, sir, I have bought you as much time as I possibly could. You can now regale us, sir, with what have you decided upon for your new strategy, aptly named the Dragon?
I'm going to need more time on that one, because today I wanted to give a little bit of an education on mutual funds.
Here I am buying you a whole half of a show to come up with the Dragon, and you hit me with mutual funds. All right, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. This is one of those kind of wasn't planning on doing all that. If I'm going to call something the Dragon, it's going to be really good, and it's going to take more than a half hour.
I was expecting like a 1/8 by 3.25 ratio swap, Condor spread, something fun,
That would be fun.
Something worthy of the name the Dragon.
Well, what would you think about coming up with doing a listener poll to see if our listeners can come up with a Dragon strategy?
Oh, I got to figure out a way to make that easy on places like social media where you only get like 4 slots, right?
Valid point. So
I'll have to write in with very specific things.
Right. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today in the world of mutual funds, oftentimes people have 401ks through their work, and they can be limited to what they can invest in within the 401k, or just in general to have some basic education on it. So actively managed mutual funds are funds where a fund manager is attempting to beat his index. So in other words, if you're invested in a stock growth fund, you're likely the average that your fund manager is looking to beat is likely the S&P 500. And so on that, just have an understanding of how it works. Now, with a fund manager, they kind of got their hands tied from the rules of managing a mutual fund. Number one, you can never have any more than 5% of the fund itself into one position. So because of that, you need to be, and the rules on that are that you need to be diversified. The other rule with which you have your hands tied a little bit is that, let's say that you have a large cap growth fund. Well, what that is that means that the fund has to invest in large cap stocks that are more growth oriented, not value oriented. Now, let's say that the fund manager, all of his indicators indicate that the market's going to crash and he wants to get out of Dodge, so to speak. He can't. By law, he has to keep with the objective of the fund, and that is to invest in growth stocks. It is your responsibility as the investor to get out of that exposure if you are concerned with the market dropping, or hire an advisor that would do that for you. So just have the understanding that if you are going to be in a mutual fund, it's designed to meet their objectives. It's not necessarily designed to help you make money. The fund is designed to meet the fund objectives. Now, as most of our listeners probably know that are listening to this show, most mutual fund managers do not beat the S&P 500 or beat their averages. And that's a sad fact of life. But the one thing that I would say to that, if you are going to invest in an actively managed mutual fund, invest in the ones that do. That's a very valid question when looking for a mutual fund. Now, that was more pertaining to the stock side of it. On the bond side of it, bond mutual funds have a little bit better track record in terms of beating their averages. So food for thought when looking for that. And so when you're in a 401k and you have these various fund selections that you can use, if you're not a fan of having a fund manager invest your money, you can look for the index funds oftentimes. So if you just want exposure to stocks, you don't want actively managed, you just want the S&P 500, that would be one area with which to look. And that is the strategy block for today in the month of May.
All right, listeners, let's keep on rolling into our final segment. It is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until our next episode on Thursday. And right now, listeners, that poll just went live. Oh, it just ticked. It was exactly 50-50. That poll that just went live a few minutes ago, listeners, our question of the week, it just ticked. We were hanging out at exactly 50-50 in our short-term trading poll. Quite simply, as the launch of these products changed the way you trade options, yes, I'm short-term now, or no, I don't trade them. It was exactly 50-50, and now it's 54.5% to the no side, to the dark side. Swing into the dark, listeners. So if you agree, disagree, at options is the place to go. It'll be right there at the top. Should still be there if you're listening to the podcast, listeners. If you're coming in after the fact later this week, of course, it'll still be there. Just scroll around a little bit. You'll find the poll. If you're coming in many years down the pike, I can't help you with this question. It'll already be done, but you'll have some other fun content looking for you. So just give us a follow at options. Make your life easier as we go around the horn. Mr. Meatball, let's start with you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until our Thursday episode?
Well, we've got Fed minutes. We've got PCE coming up. We've got earnings. And of course, the debt ceiling. Everyone's paying attention. Is there going to be some sort of near-term and then long-term solution? That is the $1 million question everyone wants to know. And
as our 0-day guy, are you surprised that our audience kind of split down the middle on this, at least in the early voting?
I'm not. That would be what I'd expect.
And Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you. Are you surprised that our audience, swinging more towards the dark side now? Interesting. You're listening to my words. So, Mr. Uncle Mike, are you surprised that our audience still evenly split for the most part, though, even though they are leaning a little bit more slightly negative? And then B, what are you watching until the Thursday show?
Can't say I'm surprised on the poll. In terms of what I'm watching going into Thursday's show, debt ceiling, along with the 4,200 mark in the SPX. We're around the highs of the year right now, and so we'll have to wait and see if good or bad debt ceiling news can push us higher or have these numbers act as resistance. That's what I'm watching.
And we will all collectively be watching what you come up with for the dragon, perhaps on our Thursday episode. What do you say, Uncle Mike? Can we have the rise of the dragon on the Thursday episode? What do you think?
I don't know if I'll have it by then.
Tell you what, we'll help you out. We'll put out something on Twitter so folks can maybe send in their suggestions. What do you think, listeners? What trade is worthy of the moniker the dragon? Let's see if we can create something new and fun here. Options names, I think we can all agree. Options names, pretty stupid. So let's come up with something cool for the dragon. Let's give Uncle Mike some help. Creating a funky spread, not his forte. Let's put it out there to you, the listeners. Mr. Meatball, what is your idea? What should the dragon be in your eye?
I was actually just thinking about that. So, what if a dragon was a butterfly with a directional call spread at the end of it? So it kind of had the head of the dragon, and then the fly itself was the wing. Something like that.
A butterfly with a call spread. So a call spread farther out of the money?
A call spread or put spread. It could be a lower-facing dragon or a bear dragon or a bull dragon.
So you're adding like an extra kicker above or below the fly?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That could be like the breath of the dragon.
So if it takes off, So my thought is the thorax of the fly is actually the dragon's wing, and then the head and face are the vertical.
I like my breath of the dragon thing a little bit there, too. I think that has some resonance. Uncle Mike, what do you think about that, sir?
I'm liking it. And maybe if we really work this right, we can get Ricky Steamboat to start listening to our show along with Slaughter and Beefcake.
I already got Slaughter. I already got Beefcake. I'm living pretty well over here. That's all. If I can get Ricky on there, yeah, the trifecta of awesome that would make. So, listeners, I think we'll put it out to you. What do you think the dragon entails? I'm curious what your suggestions would be. We have a very creative bunch. out there. Well, maybe we'll discuss some of your suggestions on the Thursday show. But now it's time to go, listeners. But don't worry. If you're listening live, we'll be back in exactly an hour with the folks from eToro. See what they have cooking in the world of crypto. Spoiler alert, it's a lot. So we'll get into all that fun in a little bit. Before we do that, let's go around the horn. Uncle Mike, if folks have their suggestions for what the Dragon should be, as well as anything else they want to check out, where should they go? What should they do?
Follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW, or check out my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you are looking for a financial advisor who will entertain a dragon strategy.
Whatever that is. We shall find out soon. And Mr. Meatball, if they have their own suggestions, or maybe they want to sit at your volatility learning tree, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, go to optionpit.com and check out all the blogs that we write every day, and you're going to be real happy. We've got chart analysis, volatility analysis, things going on geopolitically and things going on at the Treasury. If you want to better your trading, go to optionpit.com and read what we're posting every day.
Check it out. There is a lot of stuff coming out in the land of the pit. You too can check it all out. That's all you got to check out on the show today. Like I said, back in a little bit with the crypto rundown. Still playing with the schedule for the rest of the week in terms of when we're going to do boot camp, if it's going to be on the usual Wednesday day or whether it's going to be tomorrow. I think Pro Q&A now is going to be Wednesday, so we are moving some stuff around. So stay tuned if you're on the pro side for the live schedule. Stay tuned for your email for the updates on that. If you're on the on-demand side, stay tuned to your podcast device. It'll be hitting whenever you like. And then back again on Thursday for another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.